The COVID-19 pandemic became a global health crisis. It has changed the economic, medical, and public health infrastructure. Around the globe, and India in particular, healthcare professionals and researchers from biotechnology and pharma industries are looking for an effective treatment regime. Our country is the worst hit in Asia and surpassed Brazil also. Since there is no effective medical treatment has been found to work with high efficacy, getting people vaccinated is the only long-term solution to the current situation. In this context, we have to mention only about two vaccines from our country. As a nation, we should be very proud of India's self-made vaccine against COVID, that is Covaxin, developed by Bharat Biotech International Limited. They have the expertise of developing many vaccines earlier. But developing in the current situations under pressure and against timelines is not a simple task. This is indigenously developed and manufactured in our country and has the credentials of all kinds of international and scientific organizations. Let us hear about the journey of the making of Covaxin and clear the questions we have about vaccines in general from Dr. Raches. Dr. Pragnya Chigurupati will maneuver the conversation in a way to clear most of our doubts and dilemmas. Besides these, keep all your questions handy towards the end of the talk. Dr. Raches is a medical doctorate in India, completed Master of Science in Clinical Research from Emory University and a postdoctoral fellow from Johns Hopkins University, where he was trained in vaccine clinical development. He is the project leader for all SARS-CoV-2 vaccine and is involved in the making of Zika, chikungunya, typhoid, rotavirus, and Japanese encephalitis. He is the head of business development and advocacy at Bharat Biotech. He has multiple papers published to his name in reputed science journals. The talk today will be steered by younger generation. Dr. Pragnya Chigurupati is a breast oncoplastic surgeon and a consultant in Hyderabad. She has done a fellowship in breast oncology in Tata Memorial Hospital, Mumbai. She did her MRCS and breast reconstruction training in UK. She will be moderating today's session. The floor is all yours, Raches and Pragnya. Go ahead.
Thank you for having me, Ms. Chigurupati.
Hi everyone, and thank you for having me here. It's pretty interesting to be doing this on today's platform because one, obviously vaccines are the hot topic, and secondly, I think it's really nice to be doing this with Raches as we went to college together. So, well, hopefully at the end of this session, all your questions regarding vaccines will have answers to them. First of all, I would like to congratulate Team Bharat Biotech as well as Raches for coming up with the first indigenous vaccine of India. And like it was mentioned earlier, it's extremely proud. It's an extremely proud moment for us as a nation. And hopefully the future holds better for us. So Raches, to begin with, the big word for today is obviously vaccines, and it is the hot topic of debate. So going back to 2020, around February when this all started in India, it obviously started much before that in China and other parts of the world. Suddenly all eyes were on you, and there was a lot of media speculation, some good, some bad, but through it all there was a dignified silence and your work finally spoke. And having had conversations with you, I also heard the logistical issues that you had, even while transferring viral samples from Pune because of the lockdowns and curfew, which was a major challenge for you, and you had to send your team by road to pick up the viral sample. So when you and your team heard about this, what exactly went on in your mind? When was the inception of Covaxin? What challenges did you have to face behind the science as well as logistics? especially with the curfews, lockdowns, and everything was haywire at that point of time. So do you want to give us a brief journey?
Sure, absolutely, Pragnya. So, when the pandemic hit in January, when this virus was detected in Wuhan and the genetic sequence was put out on the public domain, we started working quite in a rapid fashion. We were able to license two technologies from University of Wisconsin and the Thomas Jefferson University. These are two academic universities based in the States for two different kinds of COVID vaccines. One was an intranasal and one was an injectable vaccine. And then when the pandemic started to creep its way back into India, and when Prime Minister Modi announced a Janta curfew, which was Sunday, that was the first and only day of a lockdown for us. From Monday onwards, it was back to work, back at the factory. We don't have a corporate office. So life every day revolved at our Genome Valley campus, which is in Shamirpet, Hyderabad. As mentioned to you before, we started working on these two vaccine candidates with American academia. However, due to the lockdown, international lockdowns, it was extremely hard to ship things from the US to India. So then our chairman, Dr. Krishna Ella, had an idea to work on another kind of vaccine, so a third kind of vaccine candidate, which is called an inactivated vaccine. So this has been around for several decades. It's a conventionally safe vaccine. The only concern one would have is how good of an immune response does it generate? How efficacious will it be? But from regards to a safety standpoint, inactivated vaccines are always considered to be safe. So Dr. Ella, chairman, had initial discussions with the Director General at ICMR, Dr. Balram Bhargav. You probably see him on these news conferences every day, along with Dr. Paul and other dignitaries from the Ministry of Health. He had a conversation with Dr. Bhargav to import the strain. So this is, when I say strain, I'm talking about the actual COVID-19 virus. So this virus was actually detected and stored in a lab in Pune called the National Institute of Virology, which is again government run. So thereby we had an agreement with the ICMR, the Indian Council of Medical Research, and this lab called NIV Pune. We had a tripartite agreement where we could get that virus shipped over from Pune to Hyderabad. And when I say shipped over, this is actually Sunday was Janta curfew. Monday, two of my daring colleagues, in the midst of a national pandemic, in the midst of a national lockdown, drove down to Pune, picked up the virus in their car and brought it back. That's how daring this attempt was. There were no fancy logistics companies or DHLs or FedEx to do this work for us. We had to do it ourselves. And I applaud my colleagues who made that effort to go to Pune and pick it up. And as soon as we got the virus to Hyderabad, then everything was more or less clockwork. As Ms. Uma Chigurupati rightfully mentioned, we have an array of vaccines at Bharat Biotech. We manufacture 16 different kinds of vaccines. Many of them are based on this inactivated vaccine platform. Approximately 5 are. And you've probably taken some of these inactivated vaccines. Probably to your children, you would have given them an injectable polio vaccine, or you probably take an annual influenza vaccine for the elderly people at your house. So this inactivated vaccine was not new to us. Once we got the virus, it was more or less, we kind of knew the methodology, what facilities we could deploy towards this, and what kind of raw materials we needed. So in that way, we were very much streamlined. We were able to organize our raw materials also, which is a hot topic these days, and also the supply of glass vials as well, which we were able to foresee that there could be a shortage of glass vials because there's many manufacturers making vaccines. So there's a whole list of materials that one needs to foresee before starting a project like this. And please note, this is all assuming that this vaccine is going to work. For those of you who are not part of the vaccine field, the probability of success that a vaccine will come into the market from the stage of discovery to the stage of it being licensed and available in a hospital near you, the probability of success is 6%. That's why there are so few vaccine manufacturers. Your risk appetite needs to be extraordinarily high, and the developmental process is extraordinarily long. So we were able to foresee many of these risks, mostly in part of good collaboration with the ICMR and also our expertise.
No, the more you explain, the more I'm convinced that it only takes an experienced company like Bharat Biotech to foresee all these circumstances and go ahead with what you did. My question is that, you said you had 6% success rate, right? So what kept you motivated throughout?
Oh, it was quite simple. I mean, the frontline healthcare workers were battling it out in the hospitals. Luckily, I have a white collar job. I sit in front of a laptop and conduct meetings in conference rooms. But my colleagues in manufacturing, in fact, we have 2,000 colleagues, 2,000 employees in this Hyderabad facility. 70% of them are manufacturing. So that is our entire workforce. So they are the ones actually in the lab, and they are the ones growing the virus. When you make an inactivated vaccine, essentially what you do is you have these large, we call them bioreactors. They're like fermentation tanks. If you've probably gone to a microbrewery which manufactures beer, you would have seen these large steel tanks. So it's something like that, but in a highly contained biosafety level 3 manufacturing facility where my employees are completely decked with protective equipment. They have oxygen cylinders behind them so that they don't breathe the ambient air. They breathe the air coming out of the purifier. So those are the colleagues of mine who are actually the most daring. And we inspired confidence from them and the frontline workers. And of course, it was a matter of national importance. And after studying for so long and working so hard in this field, this is our true calling. So we were happy and fortunate to be a part of this journey.
It's not only the frontline workers that should be applauded today. It's people like, the guys in your manufacturing units that actually have to be as well. So Raches, you mentioned that yours was an inactivated vaccine, right? So in simple terms, could you explain what exactly vaccines are and what is the actual process behind making them and bringing them out into the market? And this is pertaining to Covaxin as such, because you have come up with an inactivated vaccine and the data shows good results. So from the beginning till the production of one vial, how long does it take and what are the phases that you have to go through? This question is because I think most of us who are not in the vaccine field often tend to ask, we have doubts regarding why it takes such a long time to produce the vaccine. So could you just explain that to everyone, please?
Sure, definitely. So I'll start with the first part of your question on vaccine 101. So vaccine basically is a biological product that is either injected into you, or it could be intranasally administered or administered through your skin. And this product, once it enters your human body, it kind of stimulates, or it tells your immune system what to do. It gives it a message what to do. And your immune system reacts to this vaccine, which is injected into your body, and it starts generating an antibody response to that. So thereby the antibody response that is developed towards that vaccine essentially should help you towards preventing you succumbing to the disease. That is essentially what a vaccine does. It's a highly regulated biological product. These are usually given to prevent, not cure. So once you get the disease, you can't take a vaccine. But in anticipation of you getting the disease, you can take a vaccine. Vaccines are highly regulated because of this reason, because it's a prophylactic, because you're giving it to healthy individuals. You're not giving it to individuals who are sick or who are terminally ill. It's not like a last resort option. So, and vaccines are primarily, as you are aware of, they're primarily given to children that are not able to fight off diseases at such a young age because their immune system has not been fully developed. So that's essentially what a vaccine does. It enters your body, it stimulates an immune response, and your body then will be able to fight any pathogen or any virus or bacteria that enters in the future. Coming to the development of the vaccine, so it all starts off with R&D. R&D is critical. There are no generics with vaccines. One has to start from the very scratch, and one has to build their intellectual property right from step one. You cannot take it from someone else and put it into your factory and replicate it. So that's why it's very time consuming. One has to do their own R&D, their own developmental process. And then when you identify a molecule or your vaccine candidate that you have confidence in, this entire process, this discovery process, takes anywhere between 2 to 5 years. And that's assuming if you're successful. And once you're successful, you need to do a laborious preclinical toxicology study where you inject mice, rabbits, small animals, where you see if the vaccine is creating that immune response, because small animals are fairly consistent to human beings as well. So you're able to gauge the safety of the vaccine once the vaccine is administered into these animals. Are their organs okay? Is it causing any abnormal reaction in their organs? Is it creating a good immune response, which is desirable for a vaccine? And once it passes that test, it moves to, I'm sure you've all heard of this, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, human clinical trials. And again, because you're giving unknown new substances into the human for the first time, you need to be extremely careful. So phase 1 is always done in approximately 50 or so human beings. And then if it proves to be successful, you primarily look at the safety of the vaccine. If that's successful, you move to a larger phase 2 in probably 300 people. And if that's successful, you move to a phase 3, where you move to possibly anywhere above 5,000 or 10,000. So this entire process of human clinical development takes anywhere between 7 to 10 years.
But it was restricted to less than 1 year for you guys, right?
Exactly. That's something I never learned in textbooks. So I'm really fortunate to be here in Hyderabad, working with Bharat Biotech, learning how to make a vaccine in 11 months, which was never heard of. Of course, kudos to my colleagues and employees, but also there was a tremendous amount of collaboration with our collaborators, the ICMR. They helped us a significant amount of the way. They helped us for doing all those pivotal animal studies. And also the Drug Controller General of India. They are like the Indian FDA. They were also quite speedy with their review process and their validation process, and they were giving us speedy approvals as and when we requested for.
So, Raches, you mentioned that vaccines as such are supposed to be given to healthy people, right? So today, if I'm infected with the COVID virus, am I eligible to take the vaccine after I'm completely cured?
So absolutely. I believe the current Ministry of Health guidelines state that if you are infected with COVID-19, after your symptoms resolve, you can wait for a certain amount of period to take your COVID-19 vaccine. I believe the current guidance by the Ministry of Health is 6 months. And the only reason for that is because there are studies looking at people who got COVID naturally, and they tracked their antibodies for over a time span. And they noticed that even after 6 months, there was detectable antibodies in the blood. So it's for those reasons alone, such guidance has been given. And with this approach, I think it's a quite wise approach. With this approach, you're able to, knowing that in the second wave, so many of our citizens have been infected, it will at least allow the citizens who have not been infected or who are naive to COVID get their opportunity to get vaccinated.
Right. So I will get to that question of antibodies because there are a lot of queries regarding that. But before that, about your phase 3 trials, the 3 phases of your trials. At the moment, you have completed phase 3 and you are writing up the paper. But how hard was the recruitment through the?
Yeah, so it's quite hard to do any clinical trial when you're dealing with human lives, especially with a novel product, and during India's biggest healthcare crisis. And also when you're doing India's largest 30,000 sample size clinical trial. And when you ask these participants, we call them participants or volunteers in our terminology. So these are people who participate in the trial. When they come to us and if they show interest, we have to do something called we have to take their consent. So we have to explain the entire risks and benefits of participating in this trial. And also in the phase 3 trial, half of them received the vaccine, half of them received a placebo, which is just a water injection into your arm. So that placebo gives you no benefit from COVID-19. And you have to tell the participant this. When you get into this trial, if you want to volunteer for this trial, you either get vaccine or you either get placebo. So you either may be protected or you either may not be protected. And we don't know who gets vaccine, who gets placebo. It's called blinding. So the doctors at the clinical trial sites, 25 hospitals we partnered with, did not know. The patients didn't know. And we, the sponsor, also did not know. So that's quite a challenge to explain to volunteers that you get a 50% chance of receiving this vaccine. That deters a lot of people from joining clinical trials. But what we also saw was people saying, hey, even if I have a 50% chance of getting something that might be even marginally effective, why not? It's it's some amount of protection. It's better than nothing. So that was the kind of mindset our trial volunteers had. They were extremely optimistic and positive about it. And we were able to completely enroll or recruit these 25,800 participants within a month and a half's time. So the turnout and the enthusiasm shown by the doctors helping us with the trial, the investigators, and also the trial volunteers was extraordinarily high.
That's fantastic. So now that I actually have you here, I had one question regarding your phase 3 trial. The journal is yet to be, the paper is yet to be published in the journal. What are the results?
Yeah, so usually with medical journals, if you disclose the results before giving it to them, they tend to hate you for life. So unfortunately, I can't share that information with you. It will be out in a peer-reviewed journal. If it's anything you need to know about Bharat Biotech, we've been extremely transparent with our vaccine development with Covaxin. We have 9 peer-reviewed publications on Covaxin. I encourage you all to read them. And you might think these are extremely scientific and medical oriented, but when you write a paper, it's supposed to be comprehensible to even a 10th class person who understands English. So I encourage you to read them. Our phase 3 paper will be our 10th peer-reviewed publication, and which hopefully will solidify claims that Covaxin is safe, efficacious, and that will come out soon, Pragnya. Just give us some time. But however, our second interim analysis, so that's where when you're going through the trial, you're going through your phase 3 trial, you keep taking pauses and you keep looking at the data as to saying what are the preliminary results. So we got a hint of that at our second interim analysis, which states that the efficacy of the vaccine is 78% towards mild, moderate, or severe COVID-19.
Okay, great. That's amazing. So my next question is regarding the spacing of vaccines. Well, I read a 3-month follow-up in the phase 1 study about when we're supposed to be taking the booster shot, right? That's a second shot. And there was a lot of debate, and there's an existing confusion between different vaccines. It's not only Covaxin, but even Covishield and the others based on the spacing. In your phase 1 study, it says you tested for between 14 days, and in phase 2, it was 28 days. And the current guidelines say that, the most recent guidelines say that Covaxin, the space between the first and the second dose is 28 days. And for Covishield, they have recently pushed it to around 12 to 16 weeks. So scientifically speaking, what exactly determines this time period? And now that because of the increased spacing, does the efficacy actually change?
Sure, absolutely. So the only thing that determines public health policy is evidence or data that you generate from clinical trials. So that's what we're doing. That's what Covishield is doing as well. With regards to Covaxin, yes, you're right. The window to take it is 28 days, the dosing interval. That can also be extended for above 2 weeks as well. So from the 4th week to the 6th week, you're eligible to take your second dose. However, in fact, if you're not able to get your second dose between that 4th week to 6th week interval, still continue to try to get your second dose at any given point of time. You need not repeat the whole thing again. So just get your first dose and just make sure you get your second dose regardless of the dosing interval. I don't think one should be bothered too much about that. It's very important to get your second dose. With regards to Covishield, from what my understanding is of the literature that's out there on the AstraZeneca product, they have done clinical trials that suggest that their vaccine is equally efficacious if you widen that dose interval. So if you take the first dose and then if you wait for 3 months and take the second dose, nothing happens to your efficacy. They are saying, however, that your immune response is slightly better. So that is the rationale. From a programmatic standpoint and from this pandemic standpoint, the reason why the government of India, I can't speak on their behalf, but my understanding tells me that the reason why they made this decision is to ensure that there's a lot of first dose availability for other people who've not received the vaccine. So it opens it up to more people that are vaccinated, and there is a certain amount of protection conferred from both of these vaccines, even after one dose.
Right. So just to reiterate, Covaxin should be taken within 28 days or whenever you get the second dose, but there's no reason to panic. As in when you get the vaccine, you should be able to get administered. So once you take the vaccine, Raches, how long do the antibodies last? Do we have data on that?
Yeah, so I mean, every month in Bharat Biotech, there's always a new question to answer. This is the question we're trying to answer right now. Unfortunately, it's going to take a little more time. Because we've started from phase 1, 2, 3, we have approximately 27,000 people that are under a clinical trial as we speak, either phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and we're closely monitoring them. So we do have data suggests that 3 months after your second dose, there's a good amount of antibodies. We are analyzing 6 months time point right now, and we'll publish those results soon. And we have reason to believe that they should be good as well. You will have a good amount of antibody responses after 2 doses of Covaxin after 6 months. Now, the real question lies is, when do you take a booster? I'm not talking from a commercial standpoint. Of course, if you say from a vaccine manufacturing standpoint, it's great to say take 3 doses because that's more income to the company. But in all essence, the only reason why public health policymakers are suggesting that you might need to take a booster is because of these variants of concern. Because the variants are leading to diminished performance of these vaccines, it's important that you take a booster so that you can be protected not only against the original COVID, which was first detected in China, but also the emerging variants, which are being detected all across the world. So I can't give you an answer as to when you should take your booster because we don't have data. Once we have data, in a couple of months, we should have that data. And if our drug controller general approves, they will make the final decision whether a 2-dose or a booster dose is required. And when they make that decision, it will be made publicly available.
Okay, so we are yet to wait the answer for that. So when you take the vaccines, nowadays everyone is, once they get the shot, they go and start getting their antibodies measured, right? And it's kind of surprising to actually see people getting these tests done and they plan their exposure based on the number of antibodies that they have. I keep getting a couple of calls asking me if, just saying that I have 13 antibodies, am I safe? I have no antibodies in my system. Well, ultimately, would you like to comment on if it's actually necessary to check the number of antibodies and if they're depleting and panic regarding that? Because obviously, once you take the vaccine, they do work.
Absolutely. So I would say there's 2 important parameters for evaluating the performance of a vaccine with regards to an immune response standpoint. There's 2 things. There's antibodies and there's T cells. So T cells are a part of your immune system. It's probably only 2% of your immune system, but those are the cells that actually help you out in the long run. Those are the cells that actually remember that you got COVID, and it remembers the next time it sees COVID-19, it's going to rapidly produce antibodies. That's what the T cell does. And your normal antibodies, which are called B cells. So you have B stands for Bangalore, T stands for Trivandrum. So your B antibodies are your short-term antibodies. So when you get natural COVID or when you get the vaccine, you're going to have these B antibodies for maybe 6 months, maybe a year, maybe even more. But the T cells last you for life. They're called memory T cells. So it's very important to gauge the performance of a vaccine based on both of these guys, the B cells and the T cells. So when you get vaccinated or when you get infected with COVID, I'm sure the first thing you're going to do is collect your blood, send it to a diagnostic center, check your antibodies over there. The problem with those tests are twofold. First of all, the assay is is of course robust, but it's not going to tell you if those antibodies are capable of fighting COVID-19. I mean, when I say fighting COVID-19, we call it neutralization in scientific terminology, but that basically means that when the virus enters you, do those antibodies have the potential to thwart or to kill the virus? So the test you get from your diagnostic lab is not the best marker of telling you whether you're protected or not. Secondly, the tests that you take at these centers are possibly antibodies that look at other surface proteins of the virus. So as you might know, the spike protein is a very important part of the COVID-19 virus. And most of these viruses target the spike protein. So if you generate an antibody to the spike, you should be able to prevent from getting COVID-19, because the spike antibodies have the best capability of fighting off the virus. So these diagnostic centers, at times, most of the times, I've been getting this as well. I get a lot of WhatsApps with, please look at my antibody score. And it's not always a straight answer, but these antibody tests, majority of the times, report two kinds of antibodies. Antibodies to the spike, which are the important ones, antibody to the nucleocapsid, which we still don't know how important it is. So my suggestion is, and also these diagnostic tests don't tell you about the T cells, the Trivandrum cells, which I was talking about, which helps you for the long run. So I think it's very important to, of course, you can track your antibodies, speak to your doctor about it, but I don't think that would warrant you to pursue getting a third dose or so. I think the amount of antibodies that any vaccine generates is at an adequate level, otherwise it won't be licensed, is at an adequate level to protect you, at least for the short term, at least for 6 months is the data that we have today.
So the bottom line is that don't keep getting your antibodies checked regularly and just trust the vaccine that you've taken. And
absolutely trust the vaccine, but the buck doesn't stop there. Vaccines, as you know, I just told you, Covaxin's efficacy is 78%. But there is a trick to make that 100%, and that's COVID-19 appropriate behavior. So if you can do a combination of these things, go get vaccinated and continue to be mindful of your surroundings and your behavior, I think you should have no reason to get COVID-19. Right.
So you have answered my next question as well, but I'm just going to ask you the question again for the sake of the viewers today. There have been instances where people have taken the first shot and then they get infected. And the next question is, I just took the first shot. Why am I infected? So do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, so a few reasons again. The first dose is partially effective. It's not, you take the first dose and you're done. No, you still have to take the second dose. And your immune system takes time to develop a response. The second it goes into your body, it doesn't mean you're just snapping your finger and antibodies are produced. This is a biological process. The immune system doesn't know what's just been injected into your body. It takes time to understand it. It's like preparing for an exam and getting 78% marks. You need to study for a little bit, right? So that's what your body does. It takes time. In this case, for Covaxin, it takes about 45 days. Assuming you get the first dose and the second dose on time, by the 45th day or the 56th day, we have reason to believe that you should have a good antibody response. So it takes time to get there. So after you take the first dose as well, please be mindful. Please implement all COVID-19 appropriate behavior.
So the bottom line is that even after you take the second dose of the vaccine, also you might be infected, but the severity of it will be a lot lesser.
Absolutely. That's what we're seeing these days, especially with these variants. I mean, we did not predict that there would be these variants, but of course, virology teaches us that viruses mutate. That's their only goal. Their goal is to survive, no matter how, hook or crook. So they do mutate. They do mutate to gain entry into another human being. That's how viruses evolve, and that's how they've been around for so many years. With these variants, the performance of the vaccines are slightly decreasing, but they're not decreasing to a drastic rate where you should be really concerned, but they are decreasing. So one should be mindful still that once you're vaccinated, continue with these COVID-19 appropriate behavior.
COVID protocol is absolutely necessary. You just can't walk around saying I've been vaccinated. I'm going to ask you a couple of clinical questions now, Raches. Can pregnant women and breastfeeding women take the vaccine?
So I've been told that the Ministry of Health are having discussions like this. From a Covaxin standpoint, because it's based on an inactivated vaccine platform, these vaccines are usually allowed to be given to pregnant mothers. We, in fact, give influenza vaccines, which are also inactivated to pregnant individuals. However, right now, both the vaccines in India are not indicated for pregnant and lactating mothers. I've been hearing, I'm not sure, I've been hearing a rumor that potentially this will open up for at least lactating individuals. And after some more data is collected from both these vaccines, it will be opened up towards pregnant individuals. From a Bharat Biotech standpoint, we do know that pregnant mothers, lactating individuals, and children are special populations that we need to address as well. Our work doesn't stop here. I've mentioned that we've completed our phase 3 trial, but there's something called a phase 4 trial as well. I don't want to bring too many numbers with you today, but once this vaccine is licensed, this is when we start looking at children, pregnant mothers, and lactating mothers as well. So this is the next step for us to do these kinds of clinical trials in such cohorts to understand the safety and immune response of the vaccine. But we're quite optimistic that this vaccine will be safe, will be efficacious in these individuals as well. We just need some more time.
Right. So you said that the special population are the pregnant, lactating mothers. What about children under the age of 18? You have started studies on that as well. And where do we stand today?
So we've just received our permission to start a pediatric trial in children as young as 2 years of age up till 18 years of age. That trial will start on June 1st. First week of June is when we plan to initiate the trial. With pediatric trials, one needs to be extremely careful. They're not adults. So you need to be a little more cautious with your approach, with your execution, and make sure everything runs smoothly. The last thing you want is harming a child. And we have tremendous amount of experience doing clinical trials in pediatric populations. In fact, that is our bread and butter. Adults are much harder. But that trial will start June 1st. And assuming things go according to plan, assuming that the vaccine is safe and it's able to generate an immune response in these children, we should receive approval from the Drug Controller of General soon.
I'm sure there are a lot of parents out there waiting for the vaccine to come out for their children, especially with the second wave. There are lots of children being affected at this point in time. My next question, Raches, is can women on their menstrual cycle take the vaccine, and can couples trying to conceive take the vaccine?
Sure. So I think the first question you asked was quite intriguing to me. In fact, I found out about this rumor about a week ago, and it was quite surprising. I was like, wow, this is a new one. So the short answer is yes, you can take it. Please don't take it. Please don't subscribe to WhatsApp University. Less time from your phone is much better. Trust. I've been trying to do that, cut down on phone time. So please take it, even if you're experiencing your period. Coming to your second question, partners who are trying to conceive, yes, you can still take the vaccine. That's not an issue at all. But if you're planning to conceive in the immediate future, possibly like a month or so, then perhaps it's better if you wait for the Ministry of Health guidelines on COVID-19 vaccinations for pregnant mothers.
Right. Raches, to a layman, they read a lot of disclaimers on the vials and media, and like you said, WhatsApp University, saying consult your doctor before you take the vaccine. And there's so many conjectures regarding the side effects. I'm going to split my question into two. Are there any contraindications to taking the vaccine today?
Yeah, so the contraindications right now are quite rare. I mean, like a contraindication would be like, we are not currently licensed to give Covaxin to a HIV infected individual or an immunocompromised individual. So these decisions Bharat Biotech cannot make. These are decisions that the primary healthcare, the doctor has to make. So Pragnya, if you have a patient and they come to you and say, and if you have an immunocompromised patient post-surgery or whatever, it is the doctor who has to make that call in the best judgment of the patient. What we know is that the vaccine is safe. We've done extensive trials in 30,000 people. We've rolled out the vaccine to approximately 20 million people in India. So we're gathering all of that data. But again, when you come to these special populations of HIV infected people or immunocompromised people or people who are on chemotherapy, it gets very nuanced, and it's very difficult for us to do these many clinical trials in such a short interval to give you our recommendation. But this is where I think the ultimate authority should be the doctor.
So ultimately, though, for example, cancer patients and those with ischemic heart disease or any such comorbidities will have to speak to their doctors before taking the vaccine. The other question is, we know that every vaccine comes with side effects. They can be minimal and they can be to a certain extent, but it's ultimately an inactivated vaccine that's entering your body. And there's so much media hype about these side effects, and people are, well, at least a couple of months ago, they were extremely nervous to take the vaccine. What are your comments on the side effects and why people should not be afraid to take a vaccine?
Sure. So that's a fantastic question. Even if, hypothetical scenario, if I take the purest form of water, put it in a syringe and inject it into someone's muscle, there will still be a side effect. That is how the body reacts to anything that it thinks is foreign. Anything that's foreign, your body reacts. It's a natural phenomenon. In fact, it's good if your body is reacting to it, because that's how your body should be. That's how your immune system should function. That's what causes a process called inflammation. Your body is on red alert and it's ready to detect and fight whatever that foreign substance is. So as mentioned to you in the first part of my talk, that's exactly what a vaccine does. It is a completely foreign entity. It does not belong. It is not part of your body. Once injected, your body detects it, and then it starts going into work mode, starts to detect the virus, starts to mount an antibody response. And when all of these good things are happening, when your body is actually functioning, doing what it's supposed to be doing, there are other kinds of reactions that occurs when your body is operating at such a level. It could be fever, it could be a rash, it could be swelling at the site of injection, it could be generalized weakness. If all of these are mild or at least self-limiting, and if all of these occur at such a low rate, like 1 in 10 or 1 in 20, it's acceptable for a vaccine to be injected into you. That's usually what we do. We study this extensively. I told you 30,000 people have been vaccinated in our clinical trials. This is the essence. Every trial is always looking at safety. You can't ignore safety. So this is what we do. This is what every vaccine manufacturer does. So as long as the risks, which are your side effects, are extremely low and the benefits are extremely high, which is the benefits here are protection from you either getting mild COVID disease or severe COVID disease, or even succumbing to the infection. So it's always a risk-benefit analysis, and that balance always has to be tilted towards the benefit. And if it's always the case, a vaccine gets licensed.
Your phase 1 data did show good safety results as well, right? And it also does not mean that if you do not have any of these side effects, it does not mean that the vaccine is not working, because that was a commonly asked question as well. So any precautions after taking the vaccine, Raches, with regards to your daily activities, like, exercise or diet, and some people smoke, consume alcohol, any precautions before and
yes,
after?
Absolutely. So I think it's quite important for you to be in a healthy state before and after you take the vaccine. As I mentioned to you before, you're going to get injected with something foreign. You want your body to be operating at a good level. I've read papers that exercise does help your immune response. So I can't really explain what is the causal link between good exercise and a good immune response, but I do know it decreases stress. So try to exercise to whatever extent you can, not go hardcore. Just a mild, moderate exercise is what I suggest before and possibly after. good sleep. Sleep is quite important. You don't want to be stressed out when you're getting a vaccine. And also probably refrain from alcohol or tobacco consumption for maybe 2 days before and 2 days after, just to make sure, you're operating at a good level and you feel all right, you feel healthy, and you go in for your jab.
And I would like to add good hydration as well at this point in time.
Absolutely.
So, my next question, Raches, is what is herd immunity?
Yeah, so herd immunity is a topic that's also been circulating around. I studied this in my epidemiology textbooks, and I was quite surprised in the beginning of pandemic. Everyone seems to be talking about it. Herd immunity is, for example, you take a room of 10 people, and say Pragnya and Raches are vaccinated, and when we go into that room of 10 people, because we're vaccinated, we potentially don't have the virus. So in thereby, you're giving some indirect protection to those other 10 people around you. So that's what herd immunity does. But herd immunity is only effective when you have a certain amount of people vaccinated. You need to have a minimum of between 60 to 70%. There's no real hardcore number on that, but you need to have a good amount of the population vaccinated to be herd immune. And I'll tell you why herd immunity is important. There's going to be cases where you can't give vaccines to certain individuals. Pragnya can probably elaborate on this much better. Severely immunocompromised people or people who are really terminally ill. You can probably range more examples, Pragnya. But there are indications where you can't give it. You can't give it to maybe if Covaxin is licensed in 2 to 18-year-olds, it's not going to be licensed from newborn to 2-year-olds. So those individuals, those babies, infants, can't be vaccinated. Severely ill, terminally ill patients cannot get vaccinated. So at least if you're vaccinated, you probably won't be, there's a good probability that you won't have the virus in you, that you're protected. And thereby, if you interact with such and such individuals, you won't transmit the virus to them. So it's indirect protection given towards people who are not vaccinated. That's what herd immunity is.
At this point in time, how long do you think it would take for us to achieve herd immunity via vaccination?
So that's a tough call. I mean, you could get herd immunity from either natural infection or vaccines, but what we've been seeing is that natural infection is probably not the best approach to use. You can't just say, oh, the second wave has gone through India, so maybe we don't need to get vaccinated. No, I think it needs to still revolve around vaccinations, and vaccinations will still continue to be the key for us, at least for the next year.
Right. So the other common question that comes to me is, Raches, that, for example, this healthy person XY has taken Covaxin, like the first dose of Covaxin around 2 months ago, and they've gotten the second shot after 28 days. But obviously, with the current wave and the changing variants, if they have access to any other kind of vaccines, can they take it? What are combination vaccines, and can we mix these vaccines?
So right now in India, we don't have any data to indicate to the public that it's okay changing up vaccines. I would not advise it right now because we don't have data. Science is completely evidence-based research. They are doing similar studies like this in the UK, where they're giving you a Pfizer vaccine and then they're giving you a AstraZeneca vaccine with the second dose, or they're mixing it up. They're giving you first the AstraZeneca vaccine, followed by the Pfizer vaccine. That data is extremely preliminary right now. We're hearing that it's still causing some amount of side effects. We don't know how well the immune response is, but for the time being, my recommendation is not to mix and match. This is not a buffet, strictly a set menu.
Just take the vaccine that you get and make sure you're strong immunity-wise. So Raches, also intranasal vaccines, you're coming up with that, and studies are going on at the moment. Comments on that?
Very preliminary again. I don't want to make comments of a project that is ongoing here at Bharat. However, our belief is that an intranasal vaccine, so the advantages with an intranasal vaccine is that, of course, it's like a spray that goes into your nose and it stays in your upper respiratory tract. And what that does essentially is that it tells your immune system here in your nose to generate an antibody response. And these antibodies are called local antibodies. So they reside only in your nose. And the scientific understanding behind this is that if you have antibodies in your nose, when the virus enters, it's going to get killed immediately. So it's not going to get a chance to go downstairs, which is to your lungs, and cause pneumonia-like symptoms or cause respiratory complications. So if you can kill the virus here, prevent it from going downstairs, you've solved the problem. You will probably prevent disease. You will probably prevent infection. And if you prevent infection, if you stop it here, you'll prevent transmission as well. So that's the golden triad of a vaccine. That's the holy grail. If you're able to stop disease, infection, and transmission, you've hit the jackpot. That's what we're trying to do. We have good, strong animal data, which were done by the Washington University in US, that suggest that we're on the right track. However, human data also needs to corroborate that. And that's still ongoing.
Right. So just to underline, I heard this interview by Dr. Krishna a couple of weeks ago, where he clearly explained that the vaccines that we have today only protect you from lung down. And the intranasal vaccines are the ones that will protect you whenever they do come out. So obviously it is extremely important. We shouldn't be under the misconception that we will be protected and we should not be wearing the mask and following the regular COVID protocol. So am I right in saying that vaccines do not protect you completely?
You're absolutely right. Vaccines don't protect you completely, but it's important to get a majority of the population vaccinated in this country. And I believe that's what we're all working towards. But no vaccine is 100% efficacious. So the best way to combine that is with your continued mask and social distancing and other COVID-19 appropriate behavior.
Right. So I have one last question before Mrs. Uma Chigurupati will take over for the business-related questions. How does it feel to be in a global platform with such huge amount of responsibility and media scrutiny constantly?
Yeah, it feels great. The media scrutiny, not so much, but the kind of service we're able to do for our country and for the world is quite remarkable. Our chairman always says that he doesn't look at Indian, Pakistan, or Afghan, or any other country. He looks at all citizens as global citizens. So vaccines should be available to the people of India and the rest of the world as well. That's what we do with pediatric vaccines. We supply around 700 million doses of only pediatric vaccines every year. So in that way, we're extremely fortunate that all the risks are now paying its dividends. We're fortunate to have developed this vaccine in collaboration with a public organization. So we always talk about public-private partnerships. They rarely turn out to be eventful, but this collaboration was a joy to be in. Fortunate that the vaccine is working, is safe, is efficacious. Also fortunate to possibly educate the country in the right way. I mean, with every form of communication coming from our organization, we've always backed it up with the science behind it and with our papers that speak more than our words.
Fantastic. So before I sign off, Raches, well, congratulations again and kudos to Team Bharat Biotech. And I really hope everything goes well and if we are protected in the future. So good luck with that. And Mrs. Uma Chigurupati will take over the next couple of questions.
Thanks, Pragnya.
Thank you so much. Raches, I'm just going to ask one question. No science. What is the distribution system of vaccines like? If an organization like Flow, for its members, are from industry to vaccinate its employees, how do we go about it? Can you just let us know? We need that.
Sure, absolutely, Mr. Chigurupati. So right now, we are allowed to sell to 3 entities technically. We're allowed to sell to the central government, which is the Ministry of Health in Delhi. And we're also allowed, and the second entity is the state governments. Individual state governments can procure Covaxin. And the third are private hospitals who have a COIN registration, who are a registered vaccine delivery center, and who have the medical capabilities to handle any untoward events. We cannot directly supply to any corporate or private entity. That's the clear mandate given to us by the government of India. That being said, I know there's a lot of entrepreneurs and private entities here. My recommendation to you all would be to start your discussions with a private hospital and then ask the private hospital to come to Bharat Biotech. Right now, in terms of our supplies, if, for example, if I'm making 100 doses today, 70 of those doses go to the central government, where above 45-year-old participants are getting vaccinated. 70 of them are going. Another 20 are going to the state governments, and I'm only left with 10 doses to give to the private hospitals across the country. So this is the allocation ratio of what has been, this is the mandate given to us by the government, and this is what we're following. So of course, supplies are extremely strained and the timelines are slightly delayed. But our goal, our objective here at Bharat is to get this vaccine, to make sure this vaccine is equitable. When I say that, I mean that it's accessible to all parts of India.
Thank you.